I'm Nadine Brandes, the author of FAWKES, ROMANOV, and the Out of Time series, and today I'm finally answering a question that a lot of you guys have asked: how do I self-edit my manuscripts? I want to give you a bit of my process in the hopes that it will help those of you who are working on a book or writing manuscripts to self-edit your own work. I do want to give a quick disclaimer that this isn't going to work for everybody. This is my process and it arises from how my brain works. So it's important to know what sort of writer you are and to learn your own strengths and weaknesses so that when you go back to edit your own work, you know where to put some extra focus and where to skim over. Without further ado, let's get into it. Step 1, write your novel. I did a video on what to do when you finish your book, and I will link to that below. My greatest piece of advice is to set it aside and not touch it for a really long time. If you can set aside your manuscript for a couple months, that would be great. And then when you pick it back up, come watch this video, and this is how I edit. After I have my first draft, I sit back down and I reread through the entire thing and I make a list of all of the things that stand out to me as I read. I force myself to not stop and fix stuff, but instead read through and make notes of the things that do need to be fixed. This could be anything from characters to plot to setting to descriptions, magic system. Here's the part of the video where I pause and say, if you hear weird cat-like noises in the background, that's actually my 12-week-old son, who is right there. He hangs out with me when I film videos. Say hello! Can you stand up? So once you have reread through your entire manuscript, it's time to break it down and focus on all of the different aspects. I can't focus when I'm holding a baby. So once you've reread through the whole thing and you have this list of things that you want to work on, it's time to break down the book into all of the different sections and edit those one by one. Plot, characters, story world, magic system if that applies, descriptions, message if that applies, or theme. I go through the manuscript with each of those things in mind one at a time. So I will pick back up the manuscript and usually I start with the plot first. For me, I feel like I can't move forward until the plot is solid. So I will go back through the entire manuscript and I will ignore all of the character inconsistencies. I will ignore all of the magic system problems and I will only focus on the plot. Of course, there's going to be overlap. When you focus on the plot, the characters affect the plot, so you are going to work on them a bit. But usually I just try to look at that one thread, and as I read back through the novel, I pick apart all of the weaknesses and the strengths and make sure that it's flowing and it's not too slow, and make sure that there are climaxes where there need to be. And basically, I fine-tune the plot as much as I possibly can before going back and working on the next element, which is usually the characters. Sometimes I have to break down the characters into individual characters so that I go back through once and I'm just focusing on the main character. And then I go back through the manuscript again and I'm focusing on the side characters. When I'm looking at characters, I'm looking at dialogue, making sure that it's realistic and making sure that everything that they're saying is coming from the core of what their character is. If they're a sarcastic character or if they're the comic relief, I need to make sure that all of their dialogue is coming from that foundation. If they're a character with a crazy past and they're really broody and like Mr. Darcy-like, then I make sure that everything they say is coming from that perspective. It's really important to make sure that your dialogue and actions for your characters is arising from their backstory. And that's what helps make them unique. So I really break down all of the characters and I make sure that their dialogue is consistent, that their actions and their decisions are consistent and not cheesy and not cop-outs. That's a big one. Don't make your character do something that's out of character for them just because you got yourself in a sticky situation and you have to get yourself out. So make them do something totally uncharacteristic. Sorry, you have to make it hard for yourself. Because if it's too easy for your characters, then the reader is going to get bored. I also look at character arc. Where did they start? Where do I want them to end? You have to look at your character's external journey, like, okay, we have to disable the bomb. That was a really lame example. And their internal journey. Wait, how about I use an example from my own books? Okay, external journey. We want to blow up the King of England. That is the external journey. Thomas is the main character. His internal journey is figuring out how to make decisions for himself and not to just be influenced by his father or by other people in his life and their decisions. So when you break down the characters, you want to look at the internal journey and the external journey, dialogue and actions and decisions and all of that. Yes, this takes a long time. Not easy. I know it sounds like a lot. That's because it is. And you have to remember, I'm giving this all to you in like a 10-minute video video, whereas you're actually going to apply this over the course of several weeks, maybe even several months. So it may sound overwhelming now, but when you take it piece by piece, it's very manageable. Halfling is pooping right now. Now he's smiling. He's actually quite proud of that poop. Next is working on the magic system or descriptions or story world. I take it piece by piece. I can't go back through the entire book and focus on all of those things at once, and neither can you. The majority of our brains are not made to be able to handle that. You need to let yourself ignore certain problems so that you can focus on one thread, trusting that you will come back to that problem. That's why you keep a notebook next to you to write down all of the things that you notice, because you can't address them all at once. You have to take them one thread at a time. So for my people who like analogies, this is how I picture the manuscript. I think of it like a house. You're not gonna like pour the foundation and then put carpet and furniture before you have the walls and the roof. That's why they start a house with framing. You have to look at your book in all of the different layers. The framing, the walls. Then you can add the carpet and the furnishings and the light fixtures. All of the pretty stuff comes at the end. But you can't approach your manuscript and think that you can tackle the characters and plot and inner journey and external journey and descriptions all in one go, in one pass through the manuscript. Chances are something is going to be neglected, and it'll be hard to pinpoint where that is because you don't know which layers have been perfected yet. So I'm a huge fan of deconstructing your novel and attacking it layer by layer, thread by thread, and then bringing all of that together for a completed manuscript. So far it has worked for me. So generally this takes going back through the book 4 or 5 times. That in general is how I tighten a story. Now when you first start editing, you're going to be doing content editing. That means big picture stuff. You can't focus on things like commas and grammar when you're going back through your very first draft, because that draft is going to change so much as you fine tune all of the big things that by the time you get back to fine tuning each of the little sentences, they will have changed from what they were originally. I have another video that explains all of the different types of edits, the content edit, the line edit, the copy edit, and how those are different from each other and how they even use a different part of your brain. I will link to that below. So you're starting off with a content edit, tackling all of those big picture things. Once you have all of that tight, you can move on to the line edit, and that is exactly what it sounds like, going through line by line, looking at the grammar and the word choice and the sentence structure, making sure that all of your descriptions make sense. A lot of people are stronger with one type of editing and weaker with the other. Once you've broken down the novel into all of those different pieces and then edited each one, focusing solely on that as you go through the manuscript, it's ready to submit if you want to submit, or go get a professional edit if you want to get a professional edit. I advise that before you get a professional edit and before you submit to anybody, you get your manuscript as tight as you possibly can, all on your own. And once you can take it no further, that's when you take the next step. No matter what, editing is tough. And sometimes you're going to find like, hey, your characters don't need a lot of editing because maybe that's your writing strength. Some of these are going to need more focus than others, and you may not even have to go through an entire pass. But in general, deconstruct and then put them back all together. I know that my way of editing is not the only way of self-editing. This is just how I do it, and it works for me because that's how my brain works. So it starts by knowing your own writing style. It starts by knowing your strengths and weaknesses. Definitely learn that and get that first draft edited. I hope that that was helpful. If you have specific questions on how I edit different parts, ask them below and I will do my best to answer them. But until next time, if you want to keep up on my videos where I talk writing, publishing, and all of the bookish things, please click subscribe or the little bell icon that gives you an email alert every time I post a new video. So with that, happy editing and tally ho!